What's the difference between debt financing and equity financing? So it's a question that most people are highly confused about. I encourage you to get a pen and paper and write this down. So we're going to talk about the difference between being the borrower or giving up ownership, which is an equity position. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of each of them. They're very different, and legally they're very different, and what puts you in the more of a powerful position, I would say. And then the third thing, how do you know which one's right for you, or if you're even ready to do that kind of investing? So let's talk about some of the definitions and facts. As we know them, debt financing, I'm going to read the definition, means borrowing money like a loan and repaying with interest. You keep control. So you are literally giving somebody, say $50,000, $100,000 at 8, 10, 12%, and they're paying you back. In a very sophisticated way, you could say you're a hard money lender, but that's actually an ongoing process that you do typically from a family office or private equity firm or a hard money lending firm. Equity financing means selling a share of your business. You share the profits and sometimes the decisions if you're in a voting position. Smart entrepreneurs usually use a mix of both. So usually the mix is what's called a convertible note. So it is a security, and a convertible note is when you start in the debt position, say 100,000 at 10%, and that at a certain point in time, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, you can decide to convert to the equity position. Here's the benefit in my mind. In a debt position, you can be in first position, you can be in second position, you actually have a position, and the position is stronger than equity. I mean, think about it. If you're an owner of a company, even if you have a small stake of ownership, and back in the day, and when Shark Tank started, Kevin Harrington and I were on the road together, we would take 3, 5, 6, sometimes 10% of a small company just to use our brand recognition, and we would give endorsements and testimonials, etc. But the problem with equity is you win and fail together. So if the startup doesn't make it, you have nothing. So you could have put in our case, Kevin and I put a lot of time in, so we lost that. Sometimes you do time in money. And in some situations, I've been paid for some of the time, a little bit for it, and then actually being paid as a board member is more normal in that. But debt trumps equity, meaning you can actually put up a UCC1 filing and the debt gets paid back before equity if there's ever a legal situation. And again, if the company doesn't make profit, as an equity owner, you don't make profit. So you're tied to the performance of the management team. A few more things. Some just basic statistics. Equity investors are usually looking for above what the debt is. So if you're paying a 10% note, they're going to look for 13, 15, 20% return on the equity side of the performance of the company. The other benefit, and again, I'm going to talk a little bit about the pro of equity, is you get a part of the sale. So you get what I call the blue sky or the upside of the sale of the entire business. As long as it gets up, gets profitable, creates a good EBITDA, and then you sell, you make it there where the debt just gets paid back. So there are pros and cons to doing both of them. If you want to know statistically across all startups, 73% of startups use debt and 27% use equity. So it's usually debt heavy because a lot of the equity owners, if you think about Shark Tank, why are they going in for what's relatively a small amount of money to give up what is usually in the end, you never see it until the end, where the shark's actually going to control the company because they know how to run these companies. Usually people going on Shark Tank, which tens of thousands of people stand in line for it. It's great brand recognition and gets you up quickly, but you're giving a lot of equity to someone who is a shark. Now, Kevin and I did a program called You Want a Shark in Your Tank because you want our Rolodex, you want these things, you want our connections, you want our ability to move you quicker, avoid costly errors. And a lot of times that comes with a price. Now, before we continue on, I want you to subscribe to this channel. We have topics in every category. I want you to click that notification button. So every morning you're going to get a notification to say, get up and watch this video. And if you want to binge watch this channel, check in my show notes. There's a way through our process that we can track 25 hours of binge watching, much more educational than your Hulus and Paramounts and Netflix. And in exchange, we're going to give you $750 of credit towards a new tuition in what you want to do. Let me give you some examples. So again, debt financing. It's loan, credit lines, or private notes. It's also using someone's credit, could be in that category where you get paid for it. You can be paid as a secured credit lender, where you actually could even put up a bond and be paid a percent of the bond. You get paid interest, but the person keeps all the ownership, and it's good for cash flow because you can predict what the interest payments are going to be. Now, equity financing is typically, you hear from angel investors, private equity investors, partners, there's no repayment necessary. If you win, you win. If you don't, you all go down together. And a lot of times you are in a non-voting situation depending on how you did your deal. Ideal for startups and growth potential, but limited cash. So people don't have a lot of cash. Sometimes they'll supplement that with debt. And in real estate deals, they'll supplement that with construction bonds and or construction loans, depending on how you want to refi at the end of that. And if you don't have an ability to refi, that makes that position much more challenging. So how do you know if it's right for you? You got to know your money rules. If you don't know your money rules, I'm going to give you the first 3 chapters of Wealth Cycle Investing. It's my alternative investing book, part of the Millionaire Maker series, and read into risk analysis, due diligence, money rules, and start getting your own money rules so you actually have some deal criteria when these opportunities are presented to you. Now, if you have any questions, go to askloral.com, ASKLORAL, ask a question, make a request. We'll be back tomorrow.